Let's build a military-inspired watch that's full of vintage charm. And instead of boring stainless steel, today we'll be building a watch that has a titanium case. And guess what? All of the parts to build the watch cost less than $100. So you can absolutely build your own watch too. Just make sure that you avoid these simple mistakes. Hello there, my name's Kieran, welcome to Top Tier Ticker. Hope you're having a good day. I mentioned in my last build video that if you guys smashed 1,000 likes, I'd come back with another. And yeah, you guys absolutely demolished that target in about a week. Therefore, I will set the exact same target, 1,000 more likes for another build. However, next time we will be building a custom Pepsi bezel dive watch. And I already have all of the parts to build that one, so as soon as we hit 1,000 likes on this video, I'll start making it. Today though, we'll be building one of my personal favourite styles when it comes to watch collecting, the military watch. The military watch is seemingly one of the only last proper tool watches that you can find on the modern market. Watches these days seem to be getting more intricate and complicated, with different finishes and fancy colours, whereas the military watch, it's just all about function. So that's our aim with this custom build. I want to build a watch that pays respect to the military watches of the past, whilst also throwing in a bit of my own personal taste, with of course specifications that make it a top tier ticker. Of course, we'll be using AliExpress for all of the parts used in this video. I'll also show you all of the tools and equipment you need to build the watch, again all bought from AliExpress. And you'll find a link to every part that I buy for my build in the description in case you like them and want it for your build too. As with our skeleton build, the first thing that we need to decide is the movement. I'd recommend going with the Seiko NH family, as this is the movement that you'll find the most parts for on AliExpress, basically giving you more choice. Now the first thing I need to decide with this custom build is whether I want a date complication or not, and I think you'll agree that a true military watch doesn't have a date on the dial. I'm thinking back to the Dirty Dozen as a proper example of this. Now you could just buy an NH35 and have a ghost date position, but that's just sloppy watchmaking, and I criticise micro brands for doing that all the time, so I can't do it in my own build, can I? After all, Seiko already makes a true no date movement in the NH family. It is a bit more expensive than the NH35, but it's worth it to avoid that ghost date. So we'll be going with the NH38 for our titanium military watch build. This movement does technically have an open heart where you can see the balance wheel, but we won't be taking advantage of that open heart on our build. So now that we've decided the movement, we need to find a case. You can of course go for a regular steel case if you want to save a bit of money, but titanium is just so much fun. And the price difference is actually only about $10, so I would absolutely recommend just going for a titanium case here. It's definitely going to offer a more lightweight wearing experience over steel, and I think that the dullness of the titanium offers a better look with this style of watch. Now, we will need to find a strap that has matching hardware, you know, sandblasted, but that's all part of the fun, and I found a good one I'll show you later. Now, unfortunately, there isn't a ton of choice when it comes to titanium cases on AliExpress, but luckily there is this one that's a good price, and it has that military watch shape. It comes in both 36 and 39mm. Now, I'll be going with the 36mm option here because it's a bit more traditional in sizing. If you do go for the larger 39mm option, just make sure that you also get a larger dial to match. The AliExpress listing tells you what dial size you need for the case. For us, we need a 28 to 29mm dial. So let's go dial hunting. This is the area where I found it extremely difficult to choose. Now, there are two main styles to choose from here. You can either go like the field watch style or the pilot watch style. Realistically, both are incredibly similar in design. There's also some options that look like a Zinn, some that are similar to Hamilton, and lots of other recognizable designs too. Now, of course, we aren't going to have any branding on the dial of this watch. It's going to be what we call sterile. So picking a dial that looks good without a logo is key here. And after quite a while of deciding, I went for this black dial that leans slightly more towards being a Flieger than a field watch. I think it looks great without any branding on the dial. I like the little splash of yellow with that inner scale, and it's definitely one of the more original designs amongst the selection on AliExpress. Now, we're going to need to find a set of hands that works with the movement and the design, and this is another area where you have endless choice. Again though, I went classical and I went with my personal favourite style of hands. The cathedral handset was used on various Dirty Dozen models, including my personal favourite Dirty Dozen, the Longines. So we're going to honour that particular model and go with a set of cathedral hands on our build too. However, we'll be adding a little dash of spice here and going with a set that has a golden finish. No real reason except I just like how golden hands look on watches. They also somewhat tie into the colour of that inner scale on the dial too. And the last thing we need to order is a strap. Any 20mm strap will do the job here, but I'll show you exactly what strap I decided to go for after we've built the watch. And by the way, I'm super happy with the strap that we've got. But you are going to need some dedicated tools to put all of these parts together without damaging anything. Don't worry, you don't really need a lot, and everything that you do need is as cheap as chips from AliExpress anyway. I'll also leave a link to every tool that I mentioned in this video down in the description too for your build. First, you will need some finger cots. These will stop your dirty little paws leaking oils onto all the fresh watch parts. But just in case we do get any dust into our build, we're going to need a puffer. It's also just good practice to puff all of the parts to make sure everything is clean while we construct the watch. Next, a set of tweezers is absolutely essential. I'm going with a plastic pair as I don't want to scratch anything with a metal set. Now I'm going to use a watchmaking cushion to keep the movement safe whilst I work on it. This features a little soft spot in the center so that the pinion has somewhere to sit without damaging it. Then we need some special tools to get the hands onto that pinion. These are basically like little prodders that will evenly distribute the pressure. We'll definitely need a caseback tightening tool. This will allow us to get a nice tight seal with our watch, meaning that we should be able to go for a swim with it if necessary. A precautionary tool to pick up is a hand removal tool. If you mess anything up and you need to remove the hands, you will need this tool to do it safely. A gasket greaser tray will allow you to make sure your watch seal is nice and lubricated, basically offering a better chance at staying water resistant. The final thing we need for assembly is some thread locker. This will make sure that the crown of our watch stays on the stem when screwing and unscrewing the crown. Now all of those tools will only cost you about $30, and obviously once you have them you can use them for all of your future builds. For example, all these tools are the exact same tools that I used on my last build, and a lot of them are just super useful to have laying around as a watch collector anyway. Oh, and some of you may remember that in my last build I struggled to get the seconds hand onto the watch. Well, some of you experienced builders told me to pick up some watchmaking putty to help me with this one. Basically the putty will hold the hand for me when I line it up so I can put it on the pinion. So I now have some of that too. Fingers crossed I don't mess this one up. So everything has been delivered, let's get building. I first make sure that I have all of the parts I need. We've gone for the automatic Seiko NH38 movement. We've gone for this 36mm titanium case with a sapphire crystal. We've got this black Flieger style dial in 29mm. Then a set of golden cathedral hands with loom in the center. Once we have these four things, we're ready to assemble. First thing we need to do is just a little bit of prep. Make sure that the area around you is as clean as possible. No cups of coffee off to the side that might get knocked over. Close any windows that might cause a gust of wind and make you lose something that's small. Now I like to put a finger cot on every finger except my pinky. I found that all three of the bigger ones want to get involved for some reason. Next, let's get our watchmaking cushion out ready for our movement. I give this a little blow just to make sure there's no dust on it. Then we can pull out our movement and place it on the cushion. Now the first thing we do for the build is attach the dial to the movement. So have the movement rotor down on the pillow. Then pull out your dial and line it up with the movement. This is where you'll notice all of the feet on the back of the dial. These feet offer different orientations of the dial position based on the crown position of the case. Obviously we're going for a 3 o'clock crown here, so line up the dial with the movement and you'll see which of the feet are needed and which are not. On this dial we have 2 sets of feet that need removing. I just grab them with a pair of pliers, give them a bit of a twist and a bit of a pull. Be gentle though, we don't want to damage anything here, and eventually they will just pop off. Once those 4 feet are off, we should be left with 2 that fit our movement. Give the back of the dial a puff and the front of the movement a puff and connect the 2 together. Now you line up those feet with the movement and you can just give them a gentle squeeze, especially where the feet meet the movement, and they should eventually just sit flush together. Next, we're going to need to get rid of this awful blue plastic crown and replace it with our proper one. We do this now so that we don't have to mess around with the hands later on. So you want to look on the back of the movement where the crown stem is sticking out. There's this little area that we need to press down to release the stem. You need something small and long here to press it in. I recommend using a spring bar tool. This button doesn't need much pressure to activate, so don't press it heavily. Also, the crown needs to be in the winding position to be removed. Press the button down and give the crown a bit of a pull. You should feel the tension ease off and the crown should just sort of come out of the movement. Now you should have received an extra stem with your movement from AliExpress. This just looks like a long metal thing with a few gears on one end. We also need the actual crown from our new titanium case too. For this one, I needed to unscrew it from the case and we're ready to assemble. You'll notice a thread inside of the crown that's the same size as the stem. This is where you'll screw the stem into the crown. We don't need to use any thread locker yet because we'll use that at the end once we're confident that everything works as it should. So screw the new stem and our new crown together. Now we can take our new titanium case and we can place it over the top of the movement. We need to make sure that the movement and the case line up perfectly so that we can place our stem inside of the movement through the crown hole. So if it is just slightly off, just twist the movement around until it lines up. Then we can pop the stem inside of the movement through the crown hole in the case. This will click into place and you'll sort of feel a nice responsive pop when the movement accepts the stem. At this point, you should be able to wind the movement and pull the crown out to the time setting position. Now we need to measure how much of the stem needs to be chopped off so that we can screw the crown down. You can either eyeball this by taking off just a little bit at a time, or be precise and measure with a pair of calipers. I did it by eye on my first build and I wasted a couple of spare stems, so I'm going to measure it with this one just to be a bit more professional. You can make a mark on the stem with a marker to indicate where the cut needs to be made. Now I'll remove the crown and stem using that button, unscrew the crown from the stem, then chop the stem to the required amount using a pair of pliers, and then we can re-screw the crown. You can then put the stem and crown back in the movement to see if it now fits well. The ideal amount here is where you can screw the crown down fully, you have a nice pop when you unscrew the crown, plenty of room to wind the watch, and you have a nice full click when you set the time. It might be a good idea here to order a spare pack of stems, and they only cost a couple of dollars anyway. Now once you're happy with the crown and stem, we can remove it from the movement and we can move on. We'll now need to take the movement out of the case too. Now this is a little bit tricky on my one because the movement is the perfect fit with the case, but carefully give it a little tug and it should just sort of pop out. Now it's time to put on the hands. This is where I struggled immensely last time, especially with that seconds hand. So just take your time here. The hands are exceptionally delicate and we don't want to damage them. So first place the movement face up on the cushion, and then let's get our hands out ready to assemble. First we'll need to grab the hour hand. This has quite a large hole, so it's the easiest to get on. I try my best to align it with the 12 o'clock, then you can just take your hand prodder and sort of push it into place. These are only friction fit, so don't press on them too hard, and there's not really a tell for when these hands are actually in place, so it's sort of just when it feels nice and tight. Then we can get our minute hand, and again this sort of just goes on relatively easily. Just do the exact same thing that you did with the hour hand. Just make sure here that the hour and minute hand line up to tell the time correctly. Best practice is just to sort of line them both up bang on 12 o'clock. Now it's time to attempt the second hand. Will we fail again? Well, this time I have got that putty to sort of help me line it up. I've created a little holder with the putty that grabs the hand on one end. Then we need to line up the second hand with the pinion. I needed plenty of light and my reading glasses to get this one on, but I eventually did it. Admittedly, it did take me about 15 minutes. This hand does not need much pressure at all to be pressed into place, so just be careful. The hand should start ticking without it actually being pressed into place. This is where I went wrong on my last build. I was just too heavy-handed and I think I broke something. This time though, we've actually done it. Now once all of those hands are on, it's time to assemble the watch. This is a great time to give everything a puff and make sure it's nice and clean. We can then place the case over the dial, again trying to keep everything aligned. We can then pop back in our new crown and make sure that everything works as it should, and this is the perfect time to give those hands a good test. Run them around the dial a few times, make sure that they don't hit each other at any point. This might happen if you slightly bent a hand, but if everything is working as it should, it's time to lock our crown and stem together. We'll first remove the crown from the movement. We then need to unscrew it from the stem. Then we can grab our thread locker and we can place a blob of it onto one of the old plastic bags that had our watch parts inside. Then we should dip our stem into that blob of thread locker. You don't need a lot here, so just don't go crazy. Then we can screw the stem and the crown back together. You might notice a bit of excess thread locker on the stem. You can wipe that away or just use your putty to get rid of it. Then we just need to give this a little bit of time to dry. Go and make yourself a coffee at this point, you've definitely earned it. Now once you've recaffeinated, it's time to finish the build. We can then put our stem back into the movement and screw the crown down. We can then flip over the watch and put on our case back. If you got the gasket greaser, now is the time to use it. Make sure you use your tweezers and put it in the tray and give it a good oiling. Then we can pop that gasket inside of the grooves using a tweezer on the case back. Then we want to give the back of the movement a good few last puffs with the blower, and the inside of the case back too, don't forget that. Then we can screw our case back into place. You'll be able to get it pretty tight just using your fingers with the finger cuts, but for proper security, just use a case back tightening tool. Line up the tool with 3 of the grooves and tighten that puppy up. This is a good time to give the watch a final test just to make sure that everything works as it should. Also inspect the watch to see if there's any dust or debris that needs removing. This is hopefully the last time we'll need to mess about with our watch until it needs servicing in 5 or 10 years time in the future. So let's just make sure that everything is perfect now. Now if everything is good, it's time to put on our new strap and get our new watch on wrist. I decided to stick with the military theme here and I went for a NATO strap. I went for this beautiful khaki ribbed strap that has sandblasted hardware. I feel like this strap works flawlessly with the aesthetic of this watch. It actually looks like the strap was made specifically for this case and build. Now I will show you the final product in just a minute. I'll first mention again, if you want to see me do another build, a Pepsi bezel dive watch, then get this video to 1,000 likes. likes. And if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so that you don't miss that video when I upload it. Also in the description is a link to everything I used in this video for my custom build. All AliExpress links, all super cheap. Get involved, start building your own watches today. Trust me, it's so much fun. So here is the final product, my new titanium military watch. And you can definitely tell this thing is titanium because it's super duper lightweight. Those cathedral hands fit the dial perfectly. The minutes and seconds stretch flawlessly to the outer dial, with the hour hand perfectly aligning with that inner scale. The lume here is also really cool. This set of hands is actually super bright. I also think the dial design looks great with the case and, well, the overall proportions. I actually think this watch looks like it's been made by a proper watch brand, and it's not just a collection of AliExpress parts built by an amateur. And considering this was my second ever build, I already felt like I knew what I was doing a little bit. My goal now is to actually build a full collection of custom watches, maybe like a 6-slot collection in total. I want to build a watch in every style with different colours, shapes and sizes. Let me know in the comments what style of watch you want to see me build in the future. And if you haven't yet seen my original build video, then you need to go and watch it because it was absolutely chaos compared to this one. It's really entertaining though, and it's a different style of watch completely. Go and check it out. I'll see you over there. Bye for now.